And we're talking about God bless America. Be thankful for the freedom that you have underneath your feet and all around you. Are you kidding me? We got Joe Rogan and Evan Haffer, and they're just talking about bad ideologies. But Evan phrases it a little differently. And then we're going to get into afterwards 10 countries that have been communist and are still communist. And we're just going to, just give my thoughts on communism, because I decided that I was going to search up good examples of communism. Let's see what I came up with. But first, we're going to go to the Rogan clip. I am CoachColin.com. Of course, we got Keep Calm and Do Not Comply. We got Public Enemy #1. And we have the Soul Not For Sale. Discount code is I am Coach Colin. All capital letters, all one word. 1 L in the name Colin. Let's get into the clip.
And we, as a country, if we don't focus on those things, if we don't really try to focus on what is culturally important to us, what are we really going to protect? Freedom of speech. Good, for instance, in this is, we were talking about it in California, comedy is one of the last places where you should be able to say what it is that you want to say. And I'm saying everywhere we should be able to do this, and we should absolutely protect it. But if comedy's under attack from people wanting to cancel comedy because of jokes, that's a problem. As a country, as a society, that's a fucking huge problem.
Well, the Lakota had a term called the Heyoka, the sacred clown. Mm-hmm. They had a person in their society that made fun of everything because they had this need to test things. Like, how do I know if this thing is legit? If someone can't make fun of it, that's probably a thing that there's a problem with that thing. If you can't discuss it and you can't mock it, there's probably a problem with that thing. Maybe that thing is maybe there's a little bit of a culty aspect to that thing. And here's a question. Do you think we're doing the same thing overseas? Are we doing the same sort of social media campaigns?
Ooh.
We must be. I asked Mike Baker, and he fucking gave me the runaround.
I think here's my honest. Everybody that starts a conversation by saying here's my honest opinion. But my assessment in this is, I think that we have forfeited portions of foreign service to the left in the context of wokeism, politically correct, the act of maintaining your sovereignty in the context of military and then economically is not politically correct. You can't broker in that rhetoric and then implement a strategic long-term goals and objectives that are going to meet and exceed what we have to do to maintain America and ultimately America's power overseas if you believe in it. You just can't, because it's not politically correct. If you believe that all nations are created, equal and all political ideologies are equal, that's just wrong. It's not. I think communism is a dog shit ideology. I think that it should have been flushed down the international toilet a long time ago.
We just haven't done it good yet.
Yeah.
We're going to figure it out this time, Evan.
Yeah, and
You're so close-minded.
You can't dabble in it. It's so dangerous to start dabbling in these things because it's a failed ideology. You have to flush it down the toilet. It has to go away forever, and then you have to evolve past that at a certain point. But when you've co-opted our academic institutions and you've indoctrinated generations of the academic elite, and then they've worked their way into foreign service, and they've worked their way into the intelligence apparatus. Now they're going out and they're not willing to implement at the same degree that they might have been able to in the 1960s and 70s in the context of zero-sum game. We are here to win. That's what we do. And you got to play by the rules of nature, which is things will die. And when I say that, ideologies have to die. They do. When they're failed and they're bad for freedom, which I tend to believe in radical freedom, when they're bad for individual liberty, when they're bad for freedom, they gotta fucking die.
And if you're going to have communism, you're going to need someone to enforce that.
It only is implemented through tyranny. That's it.
Isn't that wild?
Yes.
That no one wants to do that math. They don't want to get to the 10th problem.
Right.
They want to stop at problem number 7 and go, well, it's really important that we share wealth, and the economic disparity is wrong, and we should all have money from the state and equal money, and we should all share, and billionaires shouldn't exist. And okay, how do you make that happen? Right. How do you take the money from the billionaires? Who do you give it to? Who gets to decide who gets what? Do we vote on where the money goes? What about those people that are under 85 IQ? Are they voting on this too?
Right.
They're going to vote for free Twinkies for everybody. free Twinkies and Mountain Dew. Yeah. I mean, if you just had, should all the billionaires spend their money on free Twinkies and Mountain Dew, and you just left it to people who aren't billionaires to vote for them, fuck those people. They're just going to vote it in. Should we take 90% of the money from people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett? Fuck yeah, they don't need that money. Click. There's a lot of people that'll tell you that.
Yeah.
They don't want, like if you're starting off, you're playing a game, like the game's capitalism. If you're starting off and you're 20 years old, 21 years old, and you don't make any money and you're out there trying to find your purpose in life, and then you see someone who's been playing this game for 50 years and he's flying around in a fucking private jet and getting driven around in a Rolls Royce, you're like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Fuck him. He's too far ahead of the game. But you're playing that game too. If you're working and you're getting paid for your work, you're playing a game. You might be playing a very low level of the game, but you're playing the game called capitalism. And the more work you do, the more money you get. The more effort you put in to figure out how to get more money, the more money you'll get if you're successful. And if you're not successful, you'll at least get lessons on how to do it wrong. And hopefully you're going to figure that out, because many people have, including that guy in the fucking Bentley, including that guy in the private jet. He's just 70 years old. And he's been playing this fucking game for 45 goddamn years hard. He knows what he's doing. And if you don't like that game, don't play it. But for you to say that he shouldn't have that money, okay, what are you going to do? You going to take it from him? Who's going to take it from him? The government? Armed people? What are you doing? Because that's the only way he's going to give it up.
It's the only way.
That's the only way you get to enforce people redistributing wealth evenly across everybody, including people that have done nothing. And now you're going to get a lot of angry people, and you're going to get a lot of resentment. You know what pops out of something like that, those ideas? Far right ideologies. Super far right. That's the rebound to this radical leftism. Steve Bannon was talking about that. He was talking about Trump, like the people that are afraid of Trump. They're like, he's a moderate. He's a moderate in this movement. And believe me, if you guys fuck with him more, someone else is going to come along that's going to resonate with these people that realize they're getting fucked. And it's going to be just like what's happening in Argentina, where this guy gets elected and he's like, fuck everything. Everything's got to go. Everything's got to go. And it's wild because people are very excited about that. There's a groundswell of people that are really fucking fed up with this bullshit being implemented in all sorts of countries all over the world. They're passing these wild hate speech laws in the UK we were talking about yesterday, where you can get arrested if you have something on your phone that could be used to incite violence. So if someone sends you a meme, it's a hilarious meme that someone decides that meme could incite violence because it's offensive. Yeah. They could arrest you. This is wild, wild shit. And this is the kind of thought process that leads us down a very bad path.
I think that's where people start to sell this thing as this is a utopian future, right? Where everybody's equal, everything is the same. We're all, in this fictional reality together. But what they don't understand is it does not look like that. It looks like a dystopian nightmare is what it looks like. In order to get to this place that you're briefing us is so amazing and equal, it has to take so much control. It's anti-psychology, it's anti-human, it's anti-freedom. Like when you take a person's freedom, that's the most valuable thing that we have.
Yeah.
It's you're taking away the human purpose. And that's the thing that I often kind of like wrestle with people. It's like, you can't take away an individual's purpose and expect that to go well. It's just not.
It's not.
Like, you can't put them into a factory job and say, well, you know what? This is your plight in life for the rest of your life. This is what you're going to do, and take away their entire existence and essence, their ability to create and thrive as an individual. That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And also, you're going to get the haves and the have-nots like you had in Cuba. You get the haves and the have-nots like you have in China. China has kind of a hybrid system, right? Like they allow some form of capitalism, but until you step out of line, they send you to the bodies exhibit.
Yeah.
It's wild how many young people are not getting this information. I think many young people are getting it now. They understand it now because of podcasts. And but they're outnumbered by the people that are just the zombies that are buying into this shit wholesale. And they're out there. And they're out there with these very strong opinions that are not very well researched at all, a lack of understanding of human nature, and also a lack of understanding of all the forces that have led them to this particular ideology in the first place. That we are, as a culture, being manipulated. We're being manipulated. And it's moving us further and further away from just sanity, just pure sanity.
Yeah, man. Well said. Well said. As a culture being manipulated, when you think about that, when you think about everything that's been going on culturally, it is kind of a manipulation. Not even kind of. It is it's a manipulation and a push towards, as Theo Von said, like this privatized communism that's coming. It's like, first they're bringing up every category that you could possibly think of, And anybody who has any kind of power or strength, any group, they're trying to demonize them and push them aside. They're trying to gather up all the minorities, so they have this huge army of just disenfranchised people who are angry and upset. It's very interesting to see. Very, very interesting, because that is where it's all heading, right? And then all of a sudden, a digital central bank digital currency pops up, and then you're like, what does that lead to? And like Rogan's brought it up so many times. I've made so many videos about it, and things heading towards like a social credit system, because all of a sudden now they have control over the credits or money, however money works at that point. And then they can shut it down, and then they can distribute it properly. And it's very interesting. It is a manipulation, because the whole time this is happening, as we inch closer and closer to that, the people who have some really good hearts that are left leaning think things are going closer and closer towards helping people who need help, and some socialist style programs that aren't going to take away everything from everybody. And they think that's a silly notion. That'll never happen. It's just going to help those who need help. But I think they're being fooled into slipping into communism. And I don't think they realize it. And the scary thing is some do. Some do. Some people are meeting up each other. They're Antifa types with green hair and, you know, those crazy big nose rings, and they're calling each other comrade, and they think it's really cool because they think they're going to be on the upper part of all of this, and they don't realize they're going to be down with everybody else if something like that actually does take shape in society. It's a wild thing. So there is a cultural manipulation. I really like that statement makes me think about it more. Like, it is a cultural manipulation. When you look at everything that's happening, it is pushing us towards this, and it's all happening culturally. We think it's just like a racism thing here and a overreaction there, and oh, these are just woke people and they're silly, but it's all really something that's kind of bulldozing us towards a very dystopian future in my mind. Because anytime I think of communism, I think of dystopian future. Now, the first thing that pops up is what Joe said. Do you think that there's American social media troll farms, for lack of a better term? He was wondering if we do the same thing that China and Russia does. I wonder if that is a thing. You know, I talked about in another episode I did with my wife, and I was talking about how I saw Justin Trudeau posted something, or he got booed at a place, and then all of a sudden there's all of these tweets that just came out like crazy, all supporting him. And I was like, where are all those from? Like, that's not the temperature of the public right now. Like, how are all these things coming? And they were all tweets of, I love him. I love him. I love him. I was like, what? I love him. It didn't make any sense. If people don't normally talk like that, there's no one that usually says, I love him. They say, I like what he does. I like the party. You know, it's very, very interesting. And I was like, where did that come from? And, you know, I only found that out because of the episode we were doing, but I wonder, you know, does Canada have some kind of, I guess so. I guess, you know, they're taking pages out of China's book. They're taking pages out of China's book heavily. They're taking whole chapters out of China's book. So yeah, that would make sense, right? Is America doing that same thing? Who are they doing it to as well? Right? Are they doing that to, you know, are they trying, they couldn't be doing it to Chinese. That's the thing. Unless they're doing some kind of hacking, spoofing type of thing, they couldn't be doing it to Chinese people. But then at the same time, when you do look at a lot of Chinese culture, they're getting a lot of hip hop. They're seeing a lot of hip hop. They all learn to break dance overnight. So they're obviously seeing some American culture. I wonder if they have access to Twitter, if they have access to any social media platforms where they can be exposed to Americans more. I wonder. Huh. And could they do that to Russia as well? I don't know. Mike Baker gave him the runaround because he doesn't want to say so. I think a even better observation would be if Mike Baker gave him the runaround on that when he asked him. That means that it is happening. Definitely. If Mike Baker doesn't want to answer, it's because he knows. Because otherwise he would just say no, right? freedom of speech in Russia or China, you know that's not a thing, right? And this is the thing with communism. You kind of look at it, and I Googled. Well, I didn't Google, but I looked into it. I'm like, are there any good examples of communism? Are there any? And honestly, I couldn't find any. Could not find any. And even when I searched that exact phrasing, like good examples of communism, they just kind of brought me to this. And then they were just talking about how it failed. And the only places that are good examples, quote unquote, are Russia and China. And then when you hear that, you're like, oh, so it's not good. And it did fail because those societies are not, the best right now. And, you can argue, a lot of people are like, oh, it's not as bad in Russia as you think, this and that. But it is bad in the sense of if you decide to be a journalist or if you decide to be someone like Tucker Carlson, they'll kick in your door and smash your head open. So it's a little bad in that respect. Let's go to a website I found. Like me, like they kick in the door, it'd be over for me instantly if I had anything bad to say about them. So 10 most recent and current communist nations in the world. We'll go by strikes. Congo, okay, that's strike one. But they ended communism, right? No one wants to live like Congo. Albania, that's strike two. Okay. Nobody wants to live the way Albania. If you don't know about Albania and communism, oh my goodness. I did a video almost a year ago where I was talking about Jordan Peterson and communism. He was talking about, and I found a documentary. Just research Albanian communist documentary, and you'll find some wild stuff. But again, they ended it in 1992 as well. This is like just a month before that, Yugoslavia, communism ended. These are not good places. Afghanistan, communism ended 1992 again, right? Just days after. Like it seems like a lot of them ended in 1992. Angeloa, I guess this is in Africa, I'm guessing. Also, months later, ended communism. Vietnam, still communist. I don't know. I'm going to say that's strike four. Laos, still communist. Look at how they have to live. Cuba, I mean, we're not even going to have a conversation about this. It's a terrible place. North Korea, are you for real? There are no good examples. And then China, but even as I was reading this, they started talking about how China has implemented elements of free market in their society. So even them realized, instead of ending communism, because then that would end our control, let's just start adding free market so people will start starting businesses. And when they do, we'll own a percentage of it. So even they realize communism is not good for the society, but it is good for control. And it seems like that's how China uses it. And that's terrible at the end of the day, right? What it seems like to me is like communism is used to take everything from everybody. And now you have this dramatically uneven playing field. People think it's even, but it's like it's even for all of you. But like I'm way above because I have everything now. And then once they have the control, then from there they can usher in, at least in China's case, they can usher in like, oh, you can start businesses, you can do this, you can do that, you can go to the market, you can do this. But now everybody knows that the punishment, like the category of punishment will be like under what communism is. How you're being watched, your freedom of speech, it's all communist, but then also you can start some businesses to give us more money. It seems crazy. It actually seems crazy. It seems like such a crazy notion. If you came to me without telling me about right and left, communism, social, capitalism, anything, and you said, do you think it's possibly a good idea to kick in the door of billionaires and anybody who's rich and take their wealth by force to redistribute it to the rest of the people, including them? They'll get some and then everybody else gets some. I'd be like, no. Without knowing anything about politics, political ideologies, anything, I'd be like, that sounds scary. Because Rogan's right. How are you going to get it? How are you going to get it from that old guy? You're going to have to get it by force, right? How are you going to implement this communism? You're going to have to do it by exactly what Evan said, by tyranny. How else is this going to happen? Sounds terrible. I don't get it. And there are some really young people who are so, maybe not misinformed. Again, maybe they think that they're going to be in a good place when the whole playing field gets flipped upside down. Maybe they think they're going to land in the proper place. I don't know. Or maybe they're just so disenfranchised that they just want to see the wealthy people of the world, the evil white men who are so wealthy in the world. Maybe they just want to see them go through something terrible, even if it means that they're going to have to exist in a society that's terrible afterwards. Maybe that's it, you know? Maybe it's fine. It's like, oh, as long as I got to take you down a notch, it's okay. You know, one time, me and my buddy, I keep saying that, I want to have him on the show, my buddy Moore, we're walking in the city, right? And these kids come up to him, young people, right? And they're like, oh, you should check this out. They're handing him pamphlets, and he's talking with them. You know, he's vibing with them. He hasn't looked at the pamphlet yet. He starts reading it, and he goes, oh, he's with a guy, and there's a guy and a girl. And he's like, oh, brother. He's like, this is pretty much socialism you're talking about. This is like communism you're talking about. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, something like that, man. You know, it's like nothing wrong with that, right? And they're calling each other comrade. He's like this young guy and girl and stuff. And then he's just like, he has a Cuban wife. He's like, get out of here with this, man. He's like, I know what this leads to. He's like, you crazy? The guy's almost getting into an argument with him. Definitely not the guy to argue with. It would have been really bad. But as he brought up that his wife is Cuban and that how people live in Cuba, the both of them that are pro-communist, they're like, Cuba's fine. It was like in a horror movie when the people who are trying to do something bad to you are kind of like in unison and they're like, Cuba's fine. Like they're trying to trick you. Like, no, Cuba's good, man. People are living good in Cuba. And he's like, bro, he's like, my wife's Cuban. Like, she lived through this. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I have family in Cuba now. What are you talking about? He's like, nah, it's fine. It's fine. It's like they know it's terrible, but they're like, I want to infect this place too. I want to infect it. I want to see it happen. It's very interesting. I would love to sit down with somebody who feels like it's a good thing and see how they come to that determination. Because, again, just thinking about the fact that it has to happen through force, just thinking about the fact that it has to be implemented through tyranny, what could possibly be good about that? And then you also go to how your freedom of speech is affected, and you have none. And then you think of China, and it's like no freedom of speech, social credit system. If you owe someone money, and someone calls you, the government intercepts your call and tells them that you owe money and they want you to remind them, and then they listen to your call to see if you actually remind your friend that he owes money. And then also there's kind of a penalty and a look downing upon if you continue to hang out with the friend who owes money. If people do certain things, their faces are put on billboards. Your social credit can go down to the point where you can't travel or do anything. It's insane. Why would you want that? I can't think of one good reason why you would want that, even as a poor person. And I have been, listen, most of these people, most of these young kids who probably have parents that like work in tech and have had it like real good, have had it real middle class their whole life. I have been poor. I have been like eating bread, margarine, and sugar on top for meals. I have been poor in my life. Corned beef and rice a lot. Like I've been I've been really, really down there. And even still, I don't think it's a good thing. Even still. Because again, like I've talked about it before, it would have took away my mother's resolve. My mother built up a heavy resolve. Started working 2 jobs. She became a competitive bodybuilder. She started working really hard. She eventually started a company. The company eventually started to take off. Me seeing that, I started realizing I need to work for myself. She had a cleaning company. I started a cleaning company. I sold my cleaning company. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what the hell? What? All of that goes away if all of a sudden we were just depending on the state. Even if she just took welfare, all of that goes away. All of that resolve, all of that hunger, all of that determination goes away. Why would you want to do that? I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it. Anyways, if you get it, let me know. I'm not going to agree with you. That's not going to happen. But I'll read the comments at least, more than likely. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of this whole thing, what Evan had to say, what Joe had to say, what I had to say, and hit me up in the comments. Like, subscribe, hit up IamCoachColin.com, and emails. Put your emails in, because somebody mentioned that I haven't been putting out a newsletter, and I never had the intention to. But since they brought that up, I've been thinking about it, and I think I might start some kind of newsletter. So that's in the works. Anyways, I'm out.